Hey folks, it's Ray with Taste Radio. Right now, I'm very excited to be sitting down with Aimee Yang, who's the founder and CEO of BetterBrand. Aimee, how are you?
I'm doing well, Ray. How are you?
Doing
Excited to be
fantastic.
here.
Yeah, I'm excited for you to be here as well. Well, this is going to be an obvious question. Did you have a bagel this morning?
I did have a bagel this morning. I had a
Nice.
better bagel, and I actually had our new flavor that is dropping soon that we're really excited about. It's the everything better bagel.
Ooh, thanks for sharing that with us. I don't know if that was under embargo or not, but it's not anymore.
Not anymore. There you go.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, I love bagels. I'm a big bagel fan. I typically have mine with smoked salmon, some onions, some capers, obviously some cream cheese as well. How do you take your bagels?
Similarly, actually. So I think the first question is, do you prefer your bagel toasted or plain? And mine's definitely toasted. But actually, fun hack is if you air fry a bagel for about 5 minutes at 350 degrees, it's life changing. I mean, truly, truly heavenly, or at least with the better bagel. And I had only found out about this a couple of months ago when it was actually a customer posted about it, tagged us on social media, and emphatically was like, "This just changed my life." So of course we tried it, and it was incredible. So air fry your better bagels. It's the way to go. And then in terms of toppings, I think I always kind of err on the side of convenience. So love cream cheese, tomatoes, some pepper, smoked salmon, always incredible if it's around.
Yeah, first of all, the air fryer thing is amazing. That's such a great hack. And does it just give it a crisper exterior? Is that what it is?
Crisper exterior, soft, chewy inside. The smell really permeates, throughout your kitchen, and it's a wonderful experience.
Huh. That sounds really cool. I'm gonna have to try that. I want to get to the business in a sec, but I want to stick
Okay.
on this tomato topic for a second. Tomatoes on bagels I think is very divisive. I
Really?
don't know where I stand. Well, because the tomato is wet. It's like this. It can get kind of juicy. It can get into the bagel. It can kind of mess with the rest of the toppings. So I've always stayed away from the tomato, even though I've kind of wanted. I mean,
Even
what's
with your
your
salmon, you don't do lox in
no?
tomato?
Mm-mm.
Interesting. So, I like it because I think it adds a little kind of diversity of texture.
Okay.
I get your point with, what if it seeps into the bagel itself? But I think that's why you have a very clear line of cream cheese. And then you top it right on top of there.
Okay. And on your advice, I'm going to try it. I'm going to give it another try. I'm going to make sure that I have a firm tomato because I
Yeah.
can't have one that's
Yes.
just a
I
little soft. Then it's going to be a mess.
I agree with that.
Okay. All right. We've been talking about bagels. Let's talk about the company of bagels. That's Better Brand. Let's just that's a good tagline. The company of bagels, Better Brand. You should start using that. Maybe not,
And
but
the Beyond Meat of carbs,
the
the
Beyond
the
Meat of
company of
carbs.
bagels. We can
I
work
like
that in.
I like yours better. The Beyond Meat of carbs. That's a great way of describing what you guys do because the future of Better Brand isn't just going to be about bagels, and we'll get into that. There's a lot of things we're going to be getting into, but when you put out your press release about the company, your first press release, one of the things that really stuck out to me was the line about how Better Brand broke records earlier this year when its founder became the first sole female founder to raise over $1 million in a venture led pre seed round across food tech, consumer, and food and beverage industries. First of all, congratulations on that. That founder
Thank
is you,
you.
obviously. Second, it's interesting because I think you could take that in a couple different ways. One is that it's incredible what you've accomplished, and yet it feels like it shows how far we have to go as an industry um, when you're the first.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's definitely true. And I think, breaking down that statement, there are a few different aspects of it or components of it that make it really differentiated, right? So one is, the sole female founder. And I think that's actually an area where the industry really can do a lot better in and make a lot of improvements in. Just kind of looking at the statistics that women founders get 2% of all venture funding, which is crazy, and especially if you look further at statistics that women-led teams generate an average of, I think it's 35% higher ROI than male-led teams. And a really well-known VC actually did this analysis of their portfolio companies and found that women-funded teams performed 63% better than the male-funded teams in their portfolio. So the fact that only 2% of funding goes to women in general, I think is crazy. And definitely an area where we all need to do better in and focus on. And then the second part of that, I think being specific to food and beverage, I think what that says is that VCs in this space, I think, need to be maybe a little bit more flexible in terms of understanding each individual company and what they're trying to achieve, rather than plugging and playing into the traditional VC model of what food and beverage typically looks like.
Most entrepreneurs, to a person that I'll speak with, they're born entrepreneurs. They always had this desire to build something on their own. Is that you as well? Are you a born entrepreneur?
That was me. Yes. I actually, oh my gosh. I mean, I don't know if I should tell this story because it's actually a little bit embarrassing. I think my actual first venture was when I was like 8 years old in second grade. At the time, my elementary school, the eighth graders, sold ice cream, right, for their to fund their school trip. And what I realized was a lot of my classmates wanted this ice cream, but never had the foresight to actually bring money so that they could buy it. Right. So what I actually did was I would lend someone like 50 cents and, they would have to pay me back, 75 cents the next
Oh my
day if
goodness.
they wanted that instant gratification of eating that ice cream bar that day. It actually lasted quite some time until one of the teachers found out about it and didn't appreciate, what I was doing, but my parents thought it was hilarious. But I guess that's a long answer to your question. But yes, it's always been in my blood. I've a couple of my cousins are serial founders and have done incredible things. And I've always been inspired by them and their energy. And I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur and always knew that was, what I was meant to do. But, it's not something that I dived in right away. And there was definitely, a path to setting that foundation to getting there.
Well, I'm really glad that you've shifted your path from childhood loan sharking, let's call it what it is,
Well,
to food
giving the people what
entrepreneurship.
they wanted, right?
Defending it still. I love it, Aimee. When you were thinking about different businesses to get into, different brands to create or companies to create, was BetterBrand one of many or was it one of one?
It was one of one, and it was the one from the get-go. And this process, it was really, so I knew I needed to work on something tangible that, I'd be passionate about and would, solve a personal pain point. Right. And to me at that point, my largest personal pain point was always around diet and healthy eating. Like I was always on the cycle of craving something, wanting to eat it. Questioning if I should, if I did, I'd feel guilty. If I didn't, I'd feel deprived. And it was just this endless cycle that consumed so much of my mind space and garnered so much anxiety. I used to dream of a world where we could just eat the foods we craved, without limitation and never had to worry about, negative health consequences or weight gain. Right. And that really comes down to the consumption of refined carbs for, a number of reasons.
Brain-changing technology is how you describe the secret behind or the foundation of BetterBrand. Was this technology available or did you have to invest in its creation?
It was not. We invested in its creation. And when I said, if we can. I think that was going back to my earlier mindset of, when I was informing the conceptualization of BetterBrand at a high level. Now I know that we can because we are, which is exciting. But going back to your question in terms of the R&D and the technology, yeah, no, we had a blank slate to work with. And actually the first million we raised as our pre-seed was just for the purposes of R&D. And quite frankly, I had done some high level research, spoke to numerous people in the industry, and had some idea of how we were going to start or go about it.
But you didn't have $1 million?
Not at that point, no. And then so we started fundraising, closed 1 million for the purposes of R&D, and just started, hit the ground running. And what was amazing, and I think so lucky in so many regards and ways, and really kind of 1 in 1 million chance type of lucky, we got it right the first time around and very quickly. And there, I have so many role models and in the industry. And I mean, one that comes to mind is Pat Brown, right? Who, is obviously the mastermind and genius, incredible scientist behind Impossible. And, when he tells his story, he tells a story about how it took $9 million, and a year of time for them to just disprove or to realize their original hypothesis of how to extract heme from soy couldn't actually be done in the way that they, thought or hypothesized or envisioned. So then they had to pivot from there. But so kind of taking that into perspective, the fact that we got it right away was crazy. And I think it was just kind of this moment of disbelief. And to put that even more into perspective, we closed our first round in February of 2021, and we launched in the end of June. So, as soon as we got that original, like that initial, like, wait, this is a prototype, like something here we can put out. We just started running, because I think in order to be able to run an efficient company, and if you believe in your product, you just need to get it out in the market as fast as possible and take the consumer on this journey with you and start telling your story and start being able to drive impact, right? So the fact that we were able to do that in the time frame that we did, and again, kind of tying back to your earlier comment on, wow, like 1 year, it wasn't that long ago. It really is true, but we've done a lot, and the project has continued to evolve, but really lucky with R&D.
When you said you got it right, what does getting it right mean? Did you apply it to a bagel? Did you apply this technology to a bagel? How did you know when you hit the jackpot, so to speak?
When the product came out and it was good.
When it was good. Good is a relative term, Aimee.
Good. I mean, it hit the specs that and expectations that we'd wanted in terms of where density needed to be, where, all these like textural qualifications needed to be, and quite frankly, that it was good, because and I know it sounds like, wait, just good, what does that mean? But if you think about the products out there in terms of consumers, it's, if a product is good for you, oftentimes you have to sacrifice, right? In terms of flavor, taste, and they're not good. They're not crave worthy. So we certainly had, is this crave worthy, and it was. So that's when we were running.
Was the initial product just dough, or was it just pieces of grain that you could poke at with a stick? I'm wondering, in all honesty, I'm wondering what did you see? Was it actual a tangible product that gave you confidence that this worked?
It was the tangible product, and we had to work all the way through the formulation aspects in terms of the proprietary ingredients that we were using were so novel, and then the processing, which is so specific, and then the enzyme technology that we were really honing in on in order to tie and pull everything together.
But why start with bagels? why were bagels the right product to start with?
One, who doesn't love bagels, right?
Right. Yeah, that's true.
I think there were a lot of proponents that kind of went into that thought process and deciding why a bagel. One was certainly the fact that everyone loves bagels, right? It's such a positive and joyful connotation, and what an incredible food to make available more broadly, and without the guilt and restriction that oftentimes comes along with it. Two is that it's the most carb heavy food, right? And what better way to put our stake in the ground as leading innovation in the refined carb space than by transforming the most carb heavy food into the carb equivalent of 2 slices of banana.
Well, you have to enjoy it. I mean, you have to enjoy it for what it is, but it also has to taste like a bagel. It has to perform like a bagel as you toast it and cut it and do all these things, fill it. Um, and, your investors have to love it, and it has to perform for them as well. It certainly sounds like it did. And it certainly sounds like that second round of funding that you brought in had a lot to do with how much your investors love the bagels. And you have some really high profile folks on your roster.
It's exactly like you were saying, is it came organically, right? From them loving the product and having tasted the product. So for our second round, which was our seed round, we closed back in October, we actually didn't go out to fundraise. And at that point, we were actually so buried in terms of just trying to keep up with everything and the pace that everything was going, and trying to build the team, that we weren't taking investor conversations or calls at all. And, I have so many unanswered emails that I'm so sorry for anyone who's listening. But it was just like at that point, it's like you would have loved to, right? Obviously, but I just didn't have the capacity. So what ended up happening was, the product was out in the market and it got in the hands of, I think this actually all started with Chris Fortunato, who's an investor out of Soma Capital. They're an incredible fund. I think they've actually breeded 18 unicorns. So just really incredible, and um, really impressed by their team.
I've never heard of that verb breeded as being
Oh,
used.
breeded. I mean, unicorns are animals, right? What do you?
They've breeded 18
They
unicorns. I like
breeded.
it.
So Chris had found out about the product through his neighbor who had ordered it, and was raving about it. So him and his wife started ordering it. And I think he was like, this is something that I really want us to be involved in. But again, at that point, we weren't taking conversations. So he reached out to Patrick Schwarzenegger, who who seen, I think, on some press articles, as being involved, and they had, been some deals together in the past, and asked for an introduction.
So Patrick was already involved in BetterBrand at this point.
Patrick was already involved, as part of our pre-seed. And um, I think Patrick asked me, and I said no, because again, it was just like they were so impressive, but it was just like the capacity. I was like, we need to just keep this company functioning. But it ended up landing out on our books, and I loved them. Incredibly bright, obviously. And they then made an introduction to Kyle Vogt, who was the previous co-founder of Twitch, and now Cruise, doing crazy things and revolutionizing transportation and technology as a whole. And one of those, just one of the most impressive people I had ever met. So we spoke, and he kind of mentioned, okay, I know you're not raising right now, but maybe it makes sense to do kind of a step up safe. I want to be involved from the beginning. I love the product vision. And I really, aligned with everything that he was saying, and his vision for the company. And it kind of just snowballed from there. He asked if I wanted an introduction to his friend Alexis Ohanian, who he thought may be a great fit. I said yes, Alexis, and I spoke. And Alexis ended up, so I think initially he was going to angel invest, but ended up bringing 776 in, to lead our seed round.
Alexis being the founder of Reddit.
Oh, Reddit, yes.
Yes. Let's talk about, your investors looking at this product and this brand and being really amazed by it? Because oftentimes when I see a brand that I want to try, it has to move me in a certain way, especially if I haven't actually tried the product yet. And what I'm getting at is packaging and presentation. What were the key elements that you wanted to convey on that front of pack that you felt like was going to move consumers to trial and be a really good introduction, not just to the brand, but to the technology that you were offering?
I think branding and packaging is so key and so important because, like you were saying, it tells the story of your company, right? If it's done correctly, it actually draws your early evangelists to you. So I think in this case, what happened is an illustration of the fact that that's true, right? So what we wanted to do is brand better as an elevated, modern, innovative collector's item.
The package itself, there's a functional component to it. There's a form component to it. Again, like how are you going to get these to market? Where do they sit on shelf? How do you mail these? What's the direct to consumer? What's the best approach for direct to consumer? How did you think about the packaging in terms of function?
Initially, so we're actually changing our packaging to be more functional. But initially, it was really about speed to market. What packaging was going to be ready in 2.5 weeks to
You guys
to
really
where
were moving fast. This is tech fast for
to,
sure.
to where we could apply our concepts and branding and make it still have that modern, innovative collector special feel. And that's how we ended up with our first iteration of packaging. But it will be actually changing soon.
How were you initially shipping these products? I mean, were the bagels frozen in the bag? And why are you changing the packaging now?
Changing the packaging now just for functionality. But originally what we had liked about this packaging was, it stood, on its own, it was freestanding. It took up a lot of space, which we think that it deserved to take.
It's a pouch, a
It's a
freestanding
pouch.
pouch.
Mhm.
Okay.
And it's a little bit different, right? It's not what you would expect from a pouch of bagel. So it differentiated it a bit. But right now, why we're changing it really is functionality. If you think about how many bags of product you put in a case box and space and now we're thinking, 3PL and shelf space. So it all comes down to the nitty-gritty details and functionality. But I think that design aesthetic and brand is always going to shine through and is always going to be, top of mind and paramount to better. And in terms of how we're shipping it, D2C, the product is frozen and then shipped ambient. So, when consumers receive it, it should be frozen or consumed immediately.
So is the next packaging going to be in a box or in a plastic bag
I
or
think
can
you're
you
going to
not
have
say
to
yet?
wait and see, right? It's going to be
Okay.
really exciting and very design forward.
I was wondering why you were dancing around exactly what the packaging was. Okay, but you're not ready to reveal it. Okay, I get it. Well, we do know that you won't be changing your URL anytime soon because you have a killer URL, which is eatbetter.com. You told me you bought that URL, which I totally get, but why was it so important to own it?
I think it's so clear on what our vision is and what we're trying to do. We're trying to help consumers eat better, right? And obviously tying in our brand name of BetterBrand. It just there could not be a more clear way to spell it out to a consumer.
For the first year that you guys were in operation and selling your bagels, I'm sure you were getting a lot of feedback. What was some of the most poignant feedback, and did you incorporate it into the next iteration of Better Brand and the bagels that you make?
Yes, 100%. So our vision from day one was put a product prototype in the market, as early as possible and really take the consumer on the journey with us and use their feedback to inform decisions. And I think consumers know also that especially when you have that messaging, you're such a new company in terms of the scope of what you're trying to do and accomplish, they're understanding it and they're excited to be on this journey and excited to provide that feedback and feel that much closer to the brand as a result. So anything from even like flavor to texture to how we were shipping the product, to lead time, to price, all of that was a component of how we grew, in terms of product development and every step of the process, since launch. And we're coming up on, I think we just passed our 7th month mark, which is crazy.
Do you expect that you'll always continue to evolve? Because,
Yes.
we talked about getting it right when it came to the technology and getting that first bagel to market. But clearly, you've learned so much about how the consumer perceives and uses these
Yes.
products. Do you expect that, there'll be a constant iteration
Yes.
of, yeah, okay.
Yes. And this is actually something that Alexis taught me is kind of that like software mindset and approach to innovation. So if you think about Apple, right, and an iPhone, there's the iOS updates are constantly turning in the background, right? And you don't know it necessarily even, but there's constantly improvement happening. And that's the exact same way we're approaching better. And I think that, is differentiated, from other food and beverage companies where it's like, okay, this is our product, let's just continue to turn it. But no, it's constant innovation. So if you order, BetterBrand 2 months ago and you order it today, you'll see a difference and improvement, and that will always be the case. And I think as a consumer, that's exciting too, right? Especially if you know the brand from such early days. There's always something to look forward to, and your expectations are always going to be blown, and it's an exciting thing to be a part of.
You always have to get better, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, if I can be devil's advocate just for 1 second here, I think it might be scary for me as an entrepreneur if I ever had the guts to be an entrepreneur, in that you want to come to market, you want to go to market with the best product. And, going back to the old saying, you only get one chance to make a great first impression. Do you have any concerns that what you're coming out with, it could be better. What you currently have could get better. I mean, does that ever give you pause?
Honestly, no. I think it's about the journey and learning, and I think consumers understand that, too, especially when it's such an innovative, novel product. And we've always been customer first. We've always addressed every concern, and it and I think what's special and unique about Better Brand is this mission that we're trying to accomplish, right? Is not just kind of improving human health on a macro level and transforming the consumer experience with food, but really kind of honing in on this mission of everything's possible, right? And not ascribing to these limitations that society has set in one way or another, and using the, if we can change, the most carb heavy food, a bagel, into the carb equivalent of 2 slices of banana, then what can't we do, right? And empowering people to use that as an example, and you know as a way of empowering and inspiring them, to kind of break free of these of molds and any kind of fears or restrictions that they might be feeling um or under. So, I think it's an exciting prospect. And I think, you need to get out early. I think no matter what, you're always going to be learning from, your mistakes. And again, there's so many founders that I look up to, the founders of CAT, right? Are certainly one of them. I think they've done an incredible job. And they tell a story about, and this is when they were going to retail, right? Like a couple years in, their first shipment to Whole Foods was because of, how it was stored, was moldy.
Mhm.
right? And they were like, okay, well, that was a learning point, and we're going to move past that because now we learned that. And I think, especially early on, people are understanding of mistakes, and it's a learning process, and that's how you correct things early on. So, and I think the best founders are not waiting for the product to be 100% perfect, because there's always going to be improvements and iterations. And, if you have something that's going to be exciting to consumer, get it out there.
Well, what would be really exciting is if I saw a better brand at a place like Starbucks, um, because Starbucks has notoriously had bad bagels. They have other branded products in their bakery section, their bakery case, but for some reason, every time you get a bagel from there, it's terrible. And I don't. I think even the people at Starbucks know this as well. So hopefully,
Yes, I
you can talk to
agree.
the folks at Starbucks, and as quickly as you got better bagels to market, maybe you can get just as quickly, get better bagels at Starbucks. I hope that
Yes.
could you can make
What's
that
a
a
funny
reality.
story about Starbucks is our chief product officer, Matthew McDonald, who, by the way, is incredible. And we really are building kind of this dream team from day one, which is another way that we've gotten lucky. And I feel so grateful for. But Matt was the prior actually executive baker to Thomas Keller, and oversaw Kinjazet per se, French Laundry, Bouchon, et cetera. Then left and to lead global commercialization or Aritzia. Just one of those one in a million type of guys. And he, we were kind of just speaking about the market and ideas, and Starbucks had come up in a conversation, and he was like, oh, I made their vanilla scone.
Oh,
I
I
was
thought you
like,
were going to say I made their bagel. I was gonna go. Oh shoot.
no, 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 no. So I was like, oh, that's casual, and you find out about these things from these incredible people who are just so humble and are wonderful. So um, a lot to be grateful for.
Yeah. Well, I'm very grateful that we're having this conversation, that we had this conversation. Aimee, it's been so great getting to know you, and I'm sure the folks listening feel like they're getting to know you as well. And I hope we all get to know Better Brand much more in the coming days. I'm really excited for the future, excited to try the everything bagels. Um, in the meantime, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me. It's been great.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ray. I really appreciate it.